One of the things that I think might be interesting to do with this channel is to talk with some of my foreign friends and ask them some common questions that a lot of foreigners get asked, and also some questions that might be interesting, learn about their experiences in Korea. If I'm going to ask other people to do it, I should probably also answer these questions. So these are 20 questions to ask a foreigner. I am from Canada. My hometown is Dunnville. It's near Niagara Falls. It's about 1 hour from Niagara Falls and 2 hours from Toronto. Yeah, so my hometown is Dunnville. Like I said, it's about an hour from Niagara Falls, 2 hours from Toronto, an hour from Hamilton, which is another larger city in Canada. It's not a very large town. In Korea, it would just be considered like a tiny village. But in Canada, it's a good sized town. It's kind of a normal sized town. It's really old. The buildings are really old. They don't really like change. It's very conservative. Our hometown is famous for mudcat, which is catfish. We have a large river that comes through our town called Grand River, but the color is, it's like cardboard. It's brown. It's awful. And so the most common fish is catfish. So we have a catfish parade. We have a statue of a catfish. We have a catfish festival. That's my hometown, famous for mudcat. Maybe I missed chip wagon French fries. Chip wagons are like a truck that parks at, for me, I remember them at baseball games and auctions. We used to go to a lot of auctions when I was growing up, and the fries were like thick cut fries, and I don't know. I'm sure that if I tried them again, I would think they were awful, but the memory of them is really good. So my story starts in Australia. So before I came to Korea, I lived in Australia for 6 months. I had some plans in Canada for landscaping. So during the Canadian winters, summer in Australia, I went there, but I couldn't really get any jobs. And this was 2008, 2009, when the economy was collapsing. And so I worked like a lot of people do in Australia on fruit farms, just staying at hostels, working on fruit farms, just trying to make enough money to go see the Great Barrier Reef. And while I was at those hostels, I met a few Koreans, and they said, "Oh, you should teach English in Korea." I was like, no. I had never really thought of myself as a teacher, so it was a very quick no for me. But when I went back to Canada, there was 0 jobs. I went to my old boss and I asked her if I could have a job. She wanted a 2-year commitment, but that job was very low paying, and a lot of times I had to choose between like paying rent and eating. So it wasn't quite enough. And my sister, my older sister, she suggested teaching English in Korea, and I said, okay. And after I applied, less than 1 month later, I was in Korea. I don't know if I really wanted to come to Korea. It just wasn't really a thought on my mind. I just didn't really consider it. So for me, it was, I guess, just having a job, earning some money. That was probably my biggest reason for coming to Korea. But things change. I have lived in Korea for more than 11 years now. Wonderful, wonderful years. I was only planning to stay for a year or two, so after like the third or fourth year, you start collecting a lot of things, and it becomes like home. I'm not sure. There's obviously a lot of differences. I think the social hierarchy is probably the biggest difference. In Canada, you like have to earn respect. People generally treat each other pretty well, but you don't. You should treat your boss as well and things like that. But just because you're older doesn't mean that you're going to get extra respect for no reason. And there's a lot more rules, unwritten rules in Korea about how to act in social situations based on social status. And that I think is probably the biggest difference. Canada's a very liberal country when it comes to certain things. So it's a long time since I came here. So trying to remember back like that far, it's kind of hard to remember what exactly was the most difficult thing to get used to. I do remember my first job was teaching at a vocational school, and a lot of the classes asked me, who do I think's the prettiest and who do I think's the most handsome? Which in Canada, if you comment on anyone's looks, like you don't do that. You could get a lawsuit, you could get in a lot of trouble. So it was a very strange thing. Like I tried to like, oh, my co-teacher is the prettiest, and they wouldn't let me get away with that. So that that was a strange thing that I remember when I got here. I think the other thing that's hard to get used to nowadays, maybe traffic. Most people are good drivers, but there's enough bad drivers that are really bad that make things dangerous as a cyclist or as another driver. That's difficult to get used to. But I've become a little bit more passive, let things go. Yeah, I guess like I knew some things about Korea. I wasn't really ignorant of Korea. But I wasn't really that invested in the idea of Korea. So I didn't really put a whole lot of time into researching how it is. So I guess the first time that I really had any assumptions about Korea was during the orientation, and they tell you, oh, Korea is going to be like this. These are some of the social norms. These are the things you should do in public, that kind of stuff. Yeah, they were generally pretty correct. Some of them were rules that aren't always, like social rules that aren't always enforced. Can't think of exact example. People spitting on the floor. Yeah, I think that a lot of foreigners have a different experience, but talking to a lot of other foreigners, it seems that depending on like what race you are, you'll have a different experience in Korea. I think in general there's an idea about a foreigner just being soundboard. Like people, when they find out you're a foreigner, well, it's pretty easy to find out I'm a foreigner. Bald white guy. Pretty easy to spot. So you get a lot of people that just come up to you and like, oh, do you speak English? Can I talk to you? Can you teach my son, teach my daughter? And it's just like, I kind of just want to live life a little bit. So I think being a foreigner in Korea, there's the assumption that you're an English speaker and like there's a good chance that you're either an English teacher or you work on a farm. I think that those foreigners get treated a lot worse than teachers. From what I hear, like white people get treated better than other races. But I'm pretty ignorant of a lot of racist kind of stuff. It doesn't mean anything to me. When something happens to me, I usually think the person's just a bad person, not that they're being racist. So I don't really think too much about it. I think there's also being a foreigner in Korea, you're always the foreigner. You never really get accepted. So there's first of all, if you're white, there's an assumption that you're American, and a lot of times people ask, oh, so when are you going back to America, or when are you going back to Canada? And you're treated kind of like a temporary person. So like for me, Korea's my home, and it'd be nice to be able to just say that, like, Korea's my home. But some people get offended by that if you say it, but people will say, oh, you're very Korean, as like a compliment, but you can't say it about yourself. Or they'll like assume that you just got to Korea, or no. Like I've been all over Korea. I've seen more of Korea than most Koreans have. I'll put up a little graphic to like show all the places. But people still want to explain things to you. Like, yeah, I know. I've been there. Yeah, I think the last question hopefully the battery died, so hopefully this did get recorded. I don't really pay too much attention to like races and stuff, so mostly from what I hear from other people is that being white gives you some advantages in Korea, treated a little differently. Being a Canadian doesn't really seem to matter too much. People just assume you're American, which if you're from Canada is kind of an insult. I'll give you kind of a strange answer. The best thing that happened to me in Korea is having my bike stolen. I was riding a very cheap bike, just not super far or anything, but I was really enjoying. I enjoyed the freedom because I didn't have a car at that time, so cycling allowed me to explore the city, get out of the city, and so I wanted to get a better bike. And I spent, I think it was $700 on a mountain bike. So it was the most I'd ever spent on a bicycle. And it was pretty nice. I got it home, I locked it up. Within 2 days, it was stolen. That fast. But the reason why it's the best thing that happened is because after that mountain bike, I bought my first road bike. And after buying that road bike, that's when I really started getting into long distance cycling. I got to see a lot more of Korea. I get to see beautiful mountains, places a lot of people don't get to see. I get to explore, I have freedom, meet friends through it. So in a weird way, having my bike stolen was maybe the best thing that happened. Since then, I've bought 4 bikes since then, but I still have that original bike. It's hard to let it go because the amount of money that I would get for it is just like, I'd rather just keep it. Well, like I said earlier, the hierarchy needs to change. I think that, like, I'm not the one that's going to change it. I think that it needs to be changed by our students, like the younger generation coming through. Because once you get to like my age, you start getting some of the benefits. Like, people treat me better than when I first came here. Just more respect that I didn't really earn just because I'm older. Being a teacher is also a pretty good position. But yeah, I think it needs to start with the younger generation, and it is going to be almost impossible to change. But once that if you can change the social hierarchy, I think that will allow a lot of social progress in other areas. Because Korea is a very conservative country, which is, it fits my personality pretty well. But I do want better for the next generation as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much of what I've changed is because of Korea, but I mean, I've grown up a lot. Like I've just getting older, things changed quite a bit. No, I was bald before I came. So a lot of things I think are more about getting older. Like it's much easier for me to let things go. I don't hold on to things too much. I focus on things that I can influence. Like I used to be a lot more idealistic, concerned about the latest political thing, the welfare of all people, like trying to do the right thing. Nowadays, I'm more like, well, you do what's best for you, I'll do what's best for me, and like hopefully what we think is the best is also good for everyone else. But I don't really hold grudges that long anymore. I think cycling has taught me a lot too. Like cycling, if someone cut me off or I got in a close call, it would just, like, I would be thinking about it for the rest of the ride, completely ruin the ride. So I think cycling's really helped me to overcome that, become a lot more passive. Cycling's also taught me that you are responsible for yourself. You cannot rely on other people, especially with safety. With cycling, I have kind of learned that there's no one to take care of me. I go for these really long rides. If something bad happens, like I got a flat tire and I had to walk 10 kilometers because the extra tube had fallen out of my bag to go to the next town to get actually I had to stay overnight there and then get a taxi the next morning to a larger town that I could get a spare tire and then be able to cycle back. So I've learned that you have to take care of yourself, and that's also translated to other parts of my life as well. At the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself. I think I'll add on to it and say that I've discovered I'm very good, or I've become a lot better at letting people go as well. So I used to be more sentimental and like, it's not that I'm not caring now. Like my mindset has changed. So being a foreigner in Korea, a lot of your foreign friends don't stick around. Like they come, they go. If you're lucky, you'll have people that last for a few years. Some people last a long time. I'm here for a long time. I have some friends that are staying here for a long time. But a lot of people do come and go, and after a while, it becomes really easy to just let them go, be happy for them that they're moving on to the next point in their life. I feel like you have to enjoy the time that you have with people, and when it's time for them to move on, be happy for them. There's an idea in Canada that everyone loves Canada because we're like this polite country that everyone wants to travel. We're really polite when we go abroad, that kind of stuff. I don't think that's as prevalent in the world as Canadians want to believe it is. I think people are more apathetic towards Canada. Like I do meet a lot of people that have been to Canada and they have good stories and good memories of Canada. But I think most people think, when they think about Western countries, they think of the United States first, maybe England next, and Canada's kind of lower. So I don't think people realize just how big Canada is, because people that I talk to, like Koreans that have lived in Vancouver or Edmonton, they're like, oh, I lived in Canada. I'm like, oh, where? Vancouver. Like, that's 3 days away. It's 3 days away from my hometown. Like, Canada is really big. And it's not all super cold. It is pretty cold, but where I'm from in Canada is like the most southern part. Most of Canadians live along the border with America. Like, our population is really down at the bottom of Canada, the southern part of Canada. People believe that like there's a lot of mountains where I'm from, but where I'm from in Canada is flat. It's super flat. And there's actually flatter, like the plains or the prairies are really, really flat. There are some very famous mountains, like the Rockies, but the nearest mountain to my hometown, I think, is 2 hours or 3 hours away. I think it's Blue Mountain, and it's not even that big of a mountain. So I didn't do much skiing. Yeah, Canada's about 100 times larger than South Korea. I think that like the stories that people remember most are when stuff goes wrong. I'm part of a group called Korea Randonneurs. I guess I don't really ride with them too much anymore, but they're a long distance cycling group, and it's all like solo efforts. So you are responsible for yourself, except for one ride every year, and it's called Flesh. And you can design your own route. It has to be more than 360 kilometers, and you can start anywhere in Korea, but everyone meets in Gwangju, which is where Korea Randonneurs started. So that's where everyone kind of meets. And around this time, I was doing a lot of cycling, and my friend Jason does way more cycling than even me. You're insane. He's insane. And so we had this really great idea that we would start 2 hours early and do an extra 50 kilometers. So our ride was over 400 kilometers, and we met the rest of our team in another town on the way there. And in the morning we set out. It was a nice cool morning. The weather was just beautiful, like perfect weather, and we were up in the mountains. I think we were meeting our friends in Jaechon, and we started in Pyeongchang, and we were going through these mountain passes, and it was a really nice ride. We met them at McDonald's. We had some extra time before the ride officially started, because everyone has to start at a certain time and finish at a certain time. It's a 24-hour event. And we had time to have a little bit of breakfast. It was nice. Started heading out towards them. It was a really good route. Around Damyeong, I always get those mixed up. The weather was starting to get a little bit cooler, like the temperature was starting to drop, and the weather forecast was calling for rain. So I prepared rain gear, and I prepared some warm gear, but not warm rain gear, because I didn't have that at the time. I think it started raining near Gwaesan, and we pulled over, we put our rain gear on, and we kept going. Maybe 250 kilometers in, it was raining a lot. It was less than 10 degrees Celsius. So it was colder than they had predicted, and it was tropical storm. Like the wind was so. We were going through puddles that went up to our knees. So you just get soaked all the way up. It's less than 10 degrees, so all of that water just is instantly like colder than 10 degrees would be without water. It's so windy that there's metal boxes flying across the road. Dean got a flat tire around 2 a.m., I want to say. And because we weren't moving, we weren't cycling anymore, I was just shaking. I was shivering so much. I had some whiskey with me, so I tried to use that to get warm, and it didn't work. I said to the guys, I'm just done. But one of the things about the long distance cycling is when you go through something like that, like really bad conditions, and you're able to finish, it's such a feeling of accomplishment. It's a great story. You build a really close relationship. And those guys, like the people in Korea Randonneurs, I think there's two types of people. There's mentally tough and physically tough. And it's a combination of both. But like Dean is the most mentally tough guy I've ever met cycling. He was probably not in good enough physical condition at that point to be doing that ride. And then on top of that, all of the bad weather. But he finished the ride. He stopped talking to anybody. He just put his hands down and he just cycled. He just didn't stop. He wasn't talking to anybody. He just kept going. That's mentally tough. Me, I was more physically tough. I was like prepared to do, like physically prepared to do all day rides. I could, no problem. But I'm mentally tough, but not as much as these guys. So if I'm not having fun, I just go home. I was like, no, that's it for me. I decided it was time for me to stop, and so I went back to the town that we had just passed. As soon as I turned around, I didn't have to pedal anymore. That's how strong the wind was. I was doing like 30 kilometers per hour without pedaling. I got to the first hotel and he kicked me out. He wouldn't give me a room. The next place did have a room available. I think I had a little bit of hypothermia. Had a warm shower, felt better the next day, took a train home. But yeah, it's maybe not a funny story, but an interesting story, I hope. I think the best place in Korea is on any small mountain road with no cars in autumn. There's really nothing better than that. That's just zen. It's just completely relaxed. That's my best place in Korea. Well, I don't think I'm ever gonna leave, so I don't think I'll have to miss Korea. I think though that if I ever did leave Korea, I would miss nature, being out in the mountains, cycling. So, this has been 20 Questions with a Foreigner, and I'm going to be asking a bunch of other people the same questions. However, if you have any other ideas for questions you'd like to ask a foreigner, maybe we can incorporate them into future videos, so leave them in the comments. And I will see you in the next video.
Like, share, and subscribe to ESLToyBox.com. This video has been sponsored by Chris's Fantasy Football Team. If you lose against Chris's Fantasy Football Team, you will be embarrassed in some shape or form the way Tim is now. Thank you for watching, and like I said before, please leave comments below and leave a like, share, and subscribe to ESL Toy Box. Thank you for watching.